Going on, everybody? Hope you're all doing well again. So I'm gonna start this off a little early. Probably gonna cut it a little early as well. Um, I happen to get some pretty decent information that I haven't had a second to look into yet because I literally just got it pertaining to this. Thank you, by the way. Um, it ties into it pretty good. Now, there's still stuff I want to cover, obviously. Hopefully, the chat's working this time. Can somebody throw something in? There's only one person in here, but can you let me know if it's working or not? Because, like I said, it's easier to do this in video, but I don't do it in video. I do it in live stream, and I do it for a good reason. All right, good. What's up? What's up, Jen? What's up, Indigo? So I left off with this, right? This was the article I was just reading. It's literally it's a pretty good article. So if you guys are interested, this is Evie, right? This isn't like a hold one second. My apologies. This isn't a type of website that I look at really, but they did a pretty good job covering this stuff, and they included some really good information. So I did go through this. Hopefully, whoever watches this watched the first one first. Otherwise, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense where I'm coming from. But I'm going to keep going with it. Now, in this last article, they mentioned Bill Gates and his funding of a certain type of mosquito back in 2004. And what this essentially does is it's the genomic sequence of a bacteria that causes an allergy to red meat. To I know they call it like pork the other white meat, right? It's still red meat. So if it makes you allergic to pork and rabbit, it's going to make you allergic to any meat that you can sustain yourself on. Why was Bill Gates funding the genetic engineering of mosquitoes that take something from a tick species, something that just so happens to align perfectly with his impossible beef, right? Because if you're allergic to meat, you're not going to be able to eat anything. But don't worry, Bill Gates has the solution. Just like Bill Gates also funded and is still funding low yield, not yield, low. Well, I wish I had it up, but it's irrelevant to this video. But it's low light crops. It's for if the dimming of the sun through geoengineering becomes too significant, then it's all fine because Bill Gates has, again, thrown his money behind the development of a crop that will be able to have high yields in very low light. And we've already seen that there has been a huge decrease in the amount of solar radiation that reaches the earth. And that correlates with chemtrails, if we're being honest, right? So that's obviously not related to this, but it is in the fact that Bill Gates, that's his MO. That's a lot of what he does, right? He'll spend a lot of money on a problem, on causing a problem, but already have the solution patented. So really the money ends up being on the solution. And that's with the jab as well, right? It's the same MO with the jab and COVID. But what he was talking about there is this: the World Mosquito Program. And again, in 2004, we're going to see the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation offer to help fund our work. What is their work? Wolbachia is discovered in 1924. In 1980, Scott O'Neill starts working on Wolbachia and dengue. Because as we read in the previous article, in the last video, it shortens the lifespan of the mosquito, the Aedes aegypti mosquito. And it also prevents the spreading of the dengue. So it is useful in that aspect. But there's a lot more to it. Wolbachia is demonstrated to be an extremely widespread natural bacterial infection of insects. Wolbachia successfully transferred between distantly related insect species. What are they talking about? Well, they're talking about from a tick to a mosquito. Why are they transferring something? Is it really just for dengue? I would like to believe that had similar conversations not been being had about climate change and how we need to reduce carbon and methane as early as the early 1990s. Wolbachia popcorn strain is discovered. A renowned molecular biologist publishes a paper reporting the discovery of a strain of Wolbachia that can shorten the lifespan of the drought. Blah, 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 blah. Professor O'Neill reads Benzer's paper and realizes that lifespan is important to the epidemiology of mosquito-transmitted diseases. He is inspired to introduce the popcorn variant into mosquito populations to shorten the lifespan of mosquitoes. This way, even small reductions in mosquito lifespan could have very big impacts on human disease. Now, I understand where they're coming from. It does make sense. But then in 2004, like I said, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation offer to help fund our work. And he obviously, if they didn't already have the World Economic Forum or the likes thereof heavily leaning on them and influencing what it is that they're researching, well, they certainly do in 2004. I mean, we released the first Wolbachia mosquitoes in Vietnam. And then there's a 2013 outbreak in Vietnam. 2014, my apologies. There's so many ties, guys. This is going to take me more than just this video because there's a lot to this that I'm just skimming over. But there's certain things that really shed some light on the fact that there's a pretty significant issue taking place. If you're allergic to eating meat, now here's just an example. Drop beef and save millions of lives, slash emissions from the World Economic Forum. From people like Bill Gates who are members of the World Economic Forum. So we know that they want us to stop eating meat. They tell us. Switching from beef to alternative proteins could save millions of lives and dramatically slash greenhouse gas emissions, the World Economic Forum said Thursday. New research conducted by the Oxford Martin School for the World Economic Forum showed that efforts to replace meat, and especially beef, could provide huge benefits for human health and the environment. The organization, famous for the plush gathering of the world's rich, famous, and influential at the luxury Swiss ski resort of Davos each January, said 2.4% of global diet-related deaths could be avoided by moving away from beef. And for wealthier countries, a full 5%. according to blah blah, alternative proteins. They're talking about insects there. They literally are talking about insects. The most positive effects are found in wealth, blah 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 blah. The paper did not provide figures on how many people are estimated to die annually from diet-related causes or lack. I guarantee you, if you eliminated meat out of people's diets, there would be a much greater increase in mortality than 2.4%. But anyways, I was kind of shocked when I seen Candace Owens suggests Bill Gates is using mosquitoes to make people allergic to beef back in September of 2022. I missed this. And again, here we are, right? The news cycle, Twitter, the Twitter sphere, or the X sphere that it is now, they're all talking about this. Not this, but the fact that there's ticks out there that can cause. It's not just the ticks, it's the mosquitoes. They'd rather have you believe that they're ticks because, well, how many times do you have a tick on you, right? But how many times do you have a mosquito on you?
Moving on, this is a headline in EV magazine. The World Economic Forum wants to make you allergic to beef, and Bill Gates has the mosquitoes to do it. I want to be very clear here. The mainstream media tells us that Bill Gates is a good guy, and so it must be true. So what if his name seems to be in the middle of a bunch of medical scandals? So what if various countries have accused him of crime?
Yeah, absolutely, Jen. I've actually been doing some deep dives into that lately. Like, it's obvious, right? We all know, like, you don't even have to go digging that far down the rabbit hole for that matter to really find out that we are literally being poisoned. There are the reason you can't pronounce a lot of the things on the back of your cereal box or whatever it is that you're eating in that processed food is because they're a combination of synthetic chemicals that man created. And often when that happens, it's a combination of certain substances and they slam it all together. So it's like toxicolic or whatever the hell it is, right? And that's the type of stuff that is being injected into our food. But if you read the Talmud, it makes perfect sense, I might add. What's up, P4? Good to see you. Again.
Crimes against humanity. So what if so many people believe that he is actually harming people via his vaccine incentives? That's all a lie. It's all a conspiracy. He's a really good guy who happened to be on Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs. But who cares? He's a good guy. He cares about you. So I want you to know this about Bill Gates, the great guy. In 2004, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation began funding the World Mosquito Program and their, quote, Wolbachia work through grand challenges in global health program. Okay, that's what the program is called. This specific program breeds and releases mosquitoes that are infected with Wolbachia bacteria. This bacteria prevents mosquitoes from passing on deadly diseases such as dengue fever, and also shortens their lifespan. The WMP has since released mosquitoes in Australia, Vietnam, Brazil, Indonesia, Colombia, Fiji, Mexico, New Caledonia.
You know what's really interesting is that same damn list of where these mosquitoes were released, just like we're seeing here in the United States, outbreaks followed. But not only that, that's not what we're talking about in this video. We're talking about that shit will make you so you will have to starve. Meat is a very important protein. If you can't eat that, where are you getting it? Eggs? Fish? Chicken. The fish are dying en masse. We don't really know why. but trout, salmon, um, tilapia. I mean, there's massive die-offs right now taking place. It's actually biblical when I look at some of the numbers. It's like it reminds me of a third of all, like a third of this will die, a third of that will die. It does seem that way because it's crashing, and I think it's by design, honestly. Right, eats the bugs. That's going to be the protein because they've told us that that's going to be our protein. And then we have douchebags like Stephen Colbert and Robert Downey Jr. sitting there talking about, you can use it in your protein shakes. And oh, it's so good and delicious. Then you have Nicole Kidman up there acting all like pretentious and being like, oh, I just love the scorpions. Oh, it's pathetic and disgusting. But for some reason, the masses eat it all up, pardon the pun.
Caledonia and Sri Lanka. The article goes on to explain that with an artificially created consumer base through mosquito-induced alpha-gal syndrome, governmental public policy, Bill Gates could manipulate the public into consuming massive amounts of fake meat. He essentially be creating.
So I just read this. I don't need to watch Candace Owens do it. I was just kind of surprised that I did see Candace Owens talking about this. It's a pretty big deal when you think about it, guys, because like if you truly just stop for a second and think about the gravity of hundreds of millions of genetically engineered mosquitoes being released into society, into the nature, into your surroundings, and not all genetically engineered in one specific way, but a variety of ways that we've covered in different videos in the past. But this one is really interesting because not only are some of the same players like Oxytec and Bill and Melinda Gates and some other players that kind of are irrelevant. Not only are they all involved in this, but they've also been involved in some of these other mass releases of mosquitoes that have gone horribly wrong, like Brazil. And then later on, unrelated, of course, these outbreaks end up happening. But on top of these outbreaks, now you're going to start messing with people's ability to effectively get their nutrition. If they can do that with red meat, they'll be able to do that with other things. Not only are they putting shit in our food that we can't read and we don't understand really what it is, but we know it can remove rust and it's been used in the automobile industry for decades. There's going to be genetically engineered, like Obama passed something years ago that said they don't even have to tell us if genetically engineered or genetically modified GMO food or GMO grains or whatever is in our food. They don't have to tell us. But by courtesy, certain brands do, but he passed that by executive order. Why? Well, if you are what you eat, and if you are digesting a lot of these poisons, essentially, that in combination with other things really don't provide your body with any sustenance, and sometimes even make you infertile or unable to reproduce in any way, right? You're barren or you have no sperm. A lot of chemicals that are being looked at right now do the same type of thing. What's up, New Edge? Good to see you. I'm glad you could join, man. No, I don't barely ever run into anybody that is on the same playing field, right? Like, hey, Jay Cree, good to see you again. I can't really have too many conversations in real life other than my wife and my daughter a little bit, my mom occasionally. But those are people that I've woken up myself, I guess. You know, not to sound like it comes off a weird way, but it's the truth, you know. But as far as just running into people and them having that set of, or at least being inquisitive enough or curious enough to actually listen openly without the prejudices that have been instilled upon them by the mainstream media and, you know, the propaganda arms that are designed to do exactly that. It's very rare that you do run into somebody that is open. And that's, again, guys, why since for a long time now, I've been trying to really, to me, it is extremely rare, even here on YouTube or Rumble or wherever, where you can get a community of such open-minded people that have the same type of hearts that we all do here. I mean, have you seen it? You can kind of get close on some channels, but it's not the same. Something's not the same. And that's what I went, like, every time they delete a channel and I only get a fraction back of the people that I originally had, it hurts because those are people that were sought out, right? Like, we are, when I say we're here for a reason, I don't say that lightly. And I mean it more specifically than it may sound. Let me move on here a little bit because I do want to get into some of the good meat. So, mosquito vector proteins homologous to A1-3 get it close. So the stuff that we're just talking about, right? Transferences of tick vectors in the context of protective immunity against malaria and hypersensitivity to vector bites. Now, if anybody knows what a vector is, especially coming out of COVID, we should all have a pretty good idea. A vector is something where you can transmit DNA data to. You can rewrite the genome of something through a vector. That's why people that caught COVID probably have a little bit of a different genome than they previously did. And this is true with many viruses that have happened throughout human history. We can track these things. That's why the debate about, like, are viruses real? No, they're not. Yet they are. Like, we have... I know a germ theory. I'm familiar with a lot of different viewpoints on this, but there's no way anybody's. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen the whole. I've been able to transfer from one thing to the next. Like, I know for a fact that viruses do exist, and it's a very effective means. Certain viruses, not all. There's certain viruses do certain things, and you can use them to transfer bits of genes into something, and it hijacks your cell, causes it. Now, there's two ways that this can happen. I can't get too far off topic, but it can either affect the nucleus and genetically alter the mitosis process of the cell splitting, and every time the cell recreates, it has the new part of whatever that virus is that wants to keep being carried on. Such like things like HIV, for instance, that do that in a very negative way. But you can take out the bad side effects, right? That's what the beauty of genetic engineering is because now we can cut and paste through things like CRISPR-Cas9, and we can take things out that will still include the reproduction process. So as the cells reproduce, now they have this new gene in them, but without all the negative side effects. Just side effects that you're going to want to use. Maybe something like making somebody allergic to the very thing that you're trying to steer people away from. That would be one mechanism that you could use it for. Another would be allowing it to pair nicely with nanotechnologies that essentially attach themselves to the nervous system and the brain and allow send and receive communication to an outside technology, right? Like literally reading your thoughts. Now, we know that these exist. They brag about these in many of the articles, these scientific journals that we cover. They're very thrilled about the fact that they are able to achieve some of this. And it makes me wonder if they're able to do these things so openly and discuss it with us, the peons. What do they really have, right? What do they really have that they're not telling us about? But anyway, an epitope, that thing, termed agal, is present in glycoconjugates of New World monkeys or platyrrhines and other mammals, but not in hominoids, and Old World monkeys, catarrhines. The difference is due to the mutation of that thing, transferase A1-3GT genes in catarrhines. Natural antibodies to agal are therefore developed. Now, let me just. Essentially, what this is saying is the title. They're using the tick. This is proof, because as I'm going to show and break down in future videos, follow the money. So what did Bill and Melinda Gates fund, right? Well, this is it. This is this type of stuff. So they even though we would, or they would have us believe that this was like an accidental discovery and that this is just a side effect of this certain protein that they're talking about. All indications seem to be that this was completely created. They realized that a tick, that really, ticks don't, I mean, yeah, people get Lyme disease and ticks do bite some people, but it's not something really anybody has to worry about for the most part, right? Like, are you worried about tick bites? Even if you live in the woods, like I can run through the woods, I'm really not worried about ticks. Mosquitoes are everywhere. So if you could transfer through a bite, which is called a vector, a transfer is a vector when we're talking about genes. If you could transfer that or be a vector of that protein, then you can cause, literally, you're funding people to be allergic to red meat, and you're saying you're doing that because of a very shoddy piece of research that shows a correlation, actually shows slight correlation between the lifespan of mosquitoes and the spread of dengue fever, or what in this case malaria. But what's fascinating is when you look at what it is that they're really testing for. They're testing the effectiveness of the bite of the mosquito on these hominoids, take that as you will, humans, right? For that specific protein. So it's not they're looking for dengue fever or how to prevent malaria. They're focused on that protein, and all that protein does in hominoids is make you allergic to red meat. That's not what it is. Like we're going through one right now. That's not what it is that they're looking at. Yes, that is something of a side effect of the bite because you genetically engineered the mosquito. And yes, that genome that has whatever the name of that bacteria was can shorten the mosquito. Like, all the funding isn't there to support that. Like, when we look through this stuff, they talk about it like it's spreading malaria, but it's all about that gene, the gene that produces that protein. And I'll break it down further, guys. I know I'm kind of a little bit all over the place here, but I'm just trying to run through it real quick because it's insane. This is Gates notes, by the way. This factory breeds 30 million mosquitoes per week. Here's why. These mosquitoes are allies in the fight against dengue and other deadly viruses. When was this? August 15, 2022. Inside a two-story brick building in Medellin, Colombia, scientists work long hours in muggy labs breeding millions and millions of mosquitoes. They tend to the insects' every need as they grow from larva to pupa to adults, keeping the temperature just right, feeding them generous helpings of fish meal, sugar, and of course, blood. Then they release them across the country to breed with wild mosquitoes that can carry dengue and other viruses like the Aedes aegypti that Oxitec have already released, threatening to sicken and kill the population of Colombia. Well, they're doing this in the U.S. as well. They're doing this in all those other countries that they gave us a list of not too long ago. This might sound like the beginning of a Hollywood writer horror film, but it's not. This factory is real, and the mosquitoes being released don't terrorize the local population. Far from it. They're actually helping to save and improve millions of lives. I doubt that'll play. Here's how they do it. The mosquitoes being produced in this factory carry bacteria called Wolbachia. Go figure, Gates. That same bacteria that just so happens to make people allergic to the very thing that you have a patent on the alternative for. No conflict of interest, nothing to see here. Let's all move on. Guys, I don't know how to emphasize the importance of stuff like this, because this is just what we're reading about. But these people are involved in a lot of this stuff, right? And let's take them at their word. Let's say that they were trying to help out the population and even though that they talk about how the population is the problem and there's too many people, too much carbon, right? Let's take them at their word and say that they're trying to help out people and trying to save them. Okay, fine, but the side effects are still very real. The fact that this is still causing very significant allergies and on just this front is a huge deal. Aedes aegypti are becoming more prevalent in the United States. They're moving from south to north, and they're increasing, just like they did in Brazil in that failed experiment. They're increasing very rapidly, and they carry all these different diseases. And it was only when that these mosquitoes were released in these very states, genetically engineered to protect against the very things that they ended up having in those states. Now, you could say that's a coincidence, and then you could combine it with this coincidence. Like, think about the ramifications. If they are going to be willing to use this type of power, we're just talking about mosquitoes here. They could do this with different things that we couldn't even imagine right now, with different animal species that do different things. The Toxoplasma gondii. You guys remember when I was talking about optogenetics and stuff like that, and how powerful some of these things were, and so what we were seeing in a certain substance? Like that, we're when we think of biological warfare, we think of the releasing of viruses and stuff. But we are far past that. We are to the point where we are genetically engineering other species that will ultimately affect us in one way or another. And that's really the takeaway here. And like I said, I'll get into some really, as far as I'm concerned, important information, some science, right? Trust the science, in the near future, talking about this stuff. It's not gonna be right away because, like I said, I just happened to get a good chunk of information in between the last video and this one, and I gotta go through it. I think it's gonna lead me in a bunch of different places, but we'll see. Ultimately, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. I'm gonna wrap it up. I hope you all have a great night. Thank you too. I really do appreciate all the info, guys. I do want to take like a moment. Nuclear quantum lasers, pew pew pew, had taken his life, and he was a friend of the channel, many channels. He was a good guy. He was a witty guy, smart guy, and I just, it's easy to get. It's not. I mean, it's overly easy. It's almost impossible not to get caught up looking at this stuff and thinking like, my goodness, you know, like what chance do we have? But we win. Like, it's not even a chance. We win this. I can promise you that. Whatever my word's worth, whether nothing or something, we do. So regardless of all of the crazy things that they're throwing at us, and they are in so many different ways, whether it's AI, whether it's psyops and alien invasions or Project Bluebeam or whatever it is that they may throw at us, if you are just aware, that's why truth is important and getting it out there and being aware of their games. But don't think that we're not going to get, like, history isn't ever changed by the masses. It's not the masses that change the world. It's people with the passion, the people that know, the people that are willing to stand by their principles, that have integrity, that those are the people that change things. Those are the people that make the difference. Those are what all the other people are, basically kind of like NPCs just moving around, right? And they're going to absorb information from any source. But it's the people that put it out there and stick to their guns and don't back down, that keep it alive and give it a fighting chance and ultimately win. Guys, I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a good night. Thank you for joining me, and I will continue to cover this because I think I did a poor job of actually explaining what it was that I wanted to do, or like try to cover. Time is a fickle bastard. Much love.